Right, so I've decided to do a more in-depth dive into my Capri. Let you have a look at it, go through a few of the build details so far. They are subject to change. These things do. As you can see there, the tube chassis at the front. I've also mentioned in the title that I'm going to discuss why I went into ladder bars rather than a four-link on this car, and I'll do that when I get underneath it. You can see the tubes there, all made by me. Excuse me. The bulkhead is made out of steel. That's to add some strength to the car as it is going to be street driven. The motor plates there are for a small block Chevy. The front one came from eBay America and it's actually off a NASCAR car, I'm told. Probably not, you know, it is eBay, but there you go. The steering rack is Capri. It's absolutely standard Capri except for poly bushes. It needs repainting as it's got damaged while it's been in the workshop. The paint, not the actual rack. The front struts are 2.8 injection Capri Bilsteins. They are standard inserts. They've been converted to spherical top mounts, and the coilover conversion has been put on them by me. I welded those sleeves on there. The brake kit is a Capri Sport 260. Works incredibly well. Uses RS Turbo 260mm Series 2 discs and an RS Turbo Series 2, sliding single pot caliper. Excellent conversion, works really well with this, and it's compatible with the drum brakes on the rear. Front springs there are currently £400. I put those in for the Chevy because it literally feels like it's been nailed to the floor. However, those will probably need to come off for the Rover because I think they'll be way too strong, but we'll wait and see. I'm not sweeping into changing those yet. The front end is mounted onto a steel frame there, and it's mounted on rose joints, so it actually becomes a flip front. I don't do that very often, but when I'm fitting up for the new engine layout, I may need to do that. None of this is going to get painted until I finish the welding under there. The tops of the wings and everything, I was leaving it masked up because the tops of the wings, the scuttle, the windscreen surrounds and the tops of the doors are going to be satin black. The paint is currently very matte. That's because I've colour sanded it to get rid of the orange peel. I hate orange peel. The top I've hand buffed here. You can probably see a reflection hopefully in there. That's just a little bit of G3 on there just to bring the shine back up a little bit, just to see how I was getting on really. Sometimes when you bring the shine you can still see the orange peel, and I don't want orange peel, I despise the stuff. Wheels and tyres. These are currently Raceways drag lights. I don't think they make those anymore. They were cheap at the time. They have a 7-inch front space and a 3-inch back space at the rear and a 10x15 rim. The problem is I'm debating whether to go with mini lights, but it's difficult getting the back spacing correct, and obviously the wheel arches and everything suit the back spacing. I don't want to be running things like spacers on there. I was going to change to an 8.8 rear axle from what's on there at the moment, and if I do that in the future I'll require different back spacing, so that might be the time to change the wheels. The front wheels are 8x13. As you can see, very deep dish at the front. It's sort of difficult to see like that, but it is really deep dish. There's very little negative, well, there's no negative zero offset on there. It's all negative out the front. Right, interior-wise, Kirky bucket seats, Auto Grassman's favourite. Got those ages and ages ago. They're an absolute nightmare to get in and out of. I've had to lose about a stone just so I can wiggle my bottom backwards and forwards through them. Steelwork inside. I've altered the pedal box recently. It has now got a clutch pedal back in there and it's mounted to the floor. Made those brackets and welded them in the other evening. The throttle pedal is from an R32 Skyline, and I've sleeved it and welded on a Capri top, purely because if you try to get a used or new Skyline throttle cable, it is an absolute fortune. This one uses a ubiquitous Capri one, which is dirt cheap. Column is Capri. It will feature a weld-on spline bung, so I can remove the steering wheel at will. It does have a removable steering wheel. However, it's an absolute nightmare to get on and off, and in the case of an accident, if you had an accident or if you were on fire or anything, it's life and death. So that's definitely going in favour of something a lot better. The steering column link there goes into some Group 4 escort fittings. There's a rose joint in the middle to support it, and a splined rod between. I don't like welding steering components like that. Unfortunately, the steering boss conversion will have to be welded on, but these are actually made with the splines on the end, so you don't have to cut them down or alter the lengths. So, the black will be going round here, excuse my finger, round here, okay, and all down here. The boot lid will also be black. Obviously I haven't got time to spray it, and I've got some cars coming in later today, so I can't be doing that at the moment. And this part here will also be black. It'll be cut off about here, so you can't see it. Right, let me take her up in the air, and I'll show you a little bit of the detail underneath. See what you think. Okay, now she's up in the air. You can see the chassis work a little better. I hope the lighting's adequate to see what's going on under here. I'm debating at the moment adding some extra triangulation into the chassis rails at the front, because there isn't an awful lot in there, and I'd rather it be nice and strong rather than wiggly wobbly flexible. You can see the track control arms are standard Capri. The tension strut kit is from an Escort and altered to fit, mk1 to Escort. As we go back, you can see the cross pieces in there. There's a prop shaft loop. Sorry about the window reflecting. The ladder bar mounts are tied into the chassis there. Safety loops on there. I bought these off eBay many years ago. And they connect via a diagonal track locator to hold the track left to right, obviously stop the wheels moving this way. And they are connected to a Reliance Scimitar axle, a Salisbury 4HA axle, which actually uses Jaguar. It's the same as a Mark II Jaguar axle, a little bit narrower, 54-inch hub to hub. Coilover suspension on there. There's a Jazz fuel cell, which you can see the masking paper still attached to. The bracket is for a Barry Grant fuel pump. Again, this will need a coat of paint over there. There's lots of anti-stone chip. It's tied into new chassis rails I made at the back. And it's all steel floors and steel tubes. It's CDS tube, which is 45mm diameter, which I believe is 1 3/4. It's about 44.3mm actually. Big 3/4 rose joints on the track locator. Again, CDS tube made here. TIG welded on the ends. Brackets made by myself. Brackets made by myself. Coilover brackets all made by myself. Those ones are actually, I think I need to adjust the pinion angle, and they're a little bit tight at the top. And I don't know whether just to grind a little off those or maybe cut them off and move them around, but time will tell if I need to adjust it or not. It's quite a long prop shaft, so the pinion angle might be fine, it might not. These use the standard Scimitar rear brakes. You can still see the Capri perches I made there for the Capri leaf springs. I did this all with the leaf springs in situ. So the tubes started to be tied into the sills on the car with the leaf springs still in situ to hold the geometry and everything correct at the rear and at the front where possible. Now then, ladder bars rather than a four-link. Okay, I read many years ago in a magazine called Street Machine that I used to be an avid reader of, that basically ladder bars do an exceptionally good job. On a small car, like a British car like this, obviously this isn't a massive car. It's not like a Plymouth or a Camaro or something like that that's a really large, heavy car. Ladder bars are really effective. A manual car or a trans-brake car helps, and a four-link, although it's more tunable, does need adjusting potentially for every track and every condition. Now I appreciate I do most of my running at Melbourne, but weather changes, the track changes, it gets more or less grip time to time, the tyres change. And I figured that once this is set up, it should, touch wood, pretty much be good to go for all events. It does, in effect, turn the rear of the car into a massive hinge. There's no independence left at all on the rear live axle, obviously. Oh, by the way, the axle does feature a Thornton power lock that I fitted from a Jaguar. Limited slip differential, and it has 331-to-1 gears, which gives it about a top speed on a 26-inch tyre of around 130 mile an hour. I know on the drag strip I was always running around just over 100 really in 13 seconds. But it's got more than enough to take it over that if you can rev it out a little bit. Those tyres originally came off, I was told they were off an IndyCar. Again, they were a cheap eBay purchase. They're a wet slick. Obviously, circuit tyres are no good for drag racing. Once I've had a few heat cycles, they don't really work. But they did work better than the Cooper Cobras I was using before. They were terrible. There was no grip whatsoever with those. I was still spinning in third gear. As soon as the nitrous hit, it just light them up. These dropped my 60 foots to about 1.8 seconds, so I was quite pleased with those. Rear valance, as you can see, I fabricated all that. There's some cutouts in the sills for the exhaust system. I've built a side exit exhaust system. I'm still debating whether to go with a single or a dual exit. There are going to have to be some more alterations, obviously, to the transmission mount area because I'm going to use a different gearbox. That is my Power Glide. Super strong, super brilliant gearbox. I know lots of friends who race those. And yeah, so that's underneath, and that's why I ended up using ladder bars. There's very limited adjustability, but I do know some people. My friend Andy runs a compulted twister. He uses ladder bars on that, brilliant. Ben uses them on his pop, brilliant. And I appreciate they're much higher power cars than this one, and obviously significantly lighter. But you know, it's all a learning curve for me, so I've gone with something that seems to be reliable and consistent, rather than trying to learn a huge amount of information at the time. I may need to change to a 4-link eventually, and I may do that. I may need to add an anti-roll bar. I don't think it's necessary on a ladder bar car. If it is, I will. If it isn't, I won't. So yeah, that's the car underneath. I'll bring it back down, and I'll draw this to a close. So to continue on, now it's down. You don't really want to see the car going up and down the ramp. It's not the most exciting thing in the world. You can see our Swiss cheese, the steelwork left in the car many, many years ago, actually, to try and lighten it somewhat. People laugh and say, well, what difference does it make? But anything you can get for nothing is worth having, in my opinion. I made steel tubs to go inside. Those are tied into the original wheel tub. There's a harness bar there with the harness tubes and the harness restraints on there for safety, and the chassis is tied into the rear sort of parcel shelf there. Again, this will all need to be painted. I'm going to flat it back and probably 2-pack it. The battery tray is there. You all saw the nitrous bottle in the last video. I've also done the bonnet this week. The bonnet was flattened down by my friend Peter, who did an excellent job on that, so that is actually ready for paint. It doesn't look it, but trust me, it is. It's lovely. I've run some gel coat on the rear of it to try and stop it being sharp under there. Probably the worst bit of videoing in the world ever there. Sorry about that. In other news, the transmission has arrived, which is a Ford Type 5 3-litre 2.8 injection Capri gearbox, 4-speed. Don't need a 5-speed, not bothered about a 5-speed. I love these gearboxes. I've had one for years and never broken it. So I'm going back to that. It's tried and tested. No, it weighs literally a ton. It's a 2-person lift. However, I found them unbreakable even with slicks. Pair of Rover SD1 heads, which are better than the ones that are on the engine over in the corner. They may or may not go on the new engine. Right, so yeah, there's the Capri in overview. If there's anything you'd like to ask, please feel free to comment. If you'd like to see more about the other cars in the workshop, I have had a request on my Facebook to do a little bit on my Skyline, so I'll do a little bit on that next week when I actually get it out. I have a couple of cars coming in later, so if you would like to see more on the other cars in the workshop as well, I'll do a couple of videos, see how they work out, see if they're popular or not. If not, doesn't matter. If they are, that's fine. I've got to kind of suck it and see, I guess. So yeah, that's it really. As I say, the bonnet's going to be satin black on the outside. The underside won't be painted. It never has been and never will be. Trying to save weight, although the gel coat did weigh a kilo. So I've probably missed things out. I've tried to record this video, believe it or not, about 5 times, but my phone kept running out of memory, so I've had to delete about 90% of my apps. Not that you care, but there you go. I've also taken the advice, again, from a friend on Facebook who's recommended getting a gimbal and a tripod so that when I do things, I can actually video me doing them and you can see them done. Hope that's of interest. Please feel free to comment if you think it's dire or whichever. Please, never learn if nobody ever tells you. You just keep doing it wrong. If there's something else you'd like to see, as I say, I will feature the skyline once I can dig it out of the corner it's in, and explain what's going on with that. It's on the back boiler at the moment. The engine for that is over yonder. This will probably upset a few of you, but I'm putting a 350Z engine in an R32 GTR. Sorry. Okay. Thank you and good night.